Hey guys, this is Tolhi, and this is going to be a remake of lessons 2 to 5 because I didn't have the text scrolled in, so no one could really see it well. So for those people who have been waiting for that, this is it. So because this is going to be 2 to 5 though, there's not going to be an intro in front of each lesson. I'm just going to roll through and then chop it up into 4 chunks. So new project. Right off the bat, someone asked what exactly is a Win32 console application. So a console is that black window that comes up that we're doing all that typing in. So that's what the console is. So you're making a Win32 console application. If you were to make a Win32 project, though, this is what you would do for graphics and 2D or 3D games. But for what we're doing, we only need the console application because we're just going to be typing text to the console when we first get started here. So we're going to make a project called Hello World, which I think I already have one called that, so we're going to call it Hello World Remake. And go application settings, very important, click empty project. If you don't click that, you're going to get these precompiled headers. They're not needed, and it's just going to make things more complicated than they need to be. So we'll hit finish and it'll make our first project, and then from the source files we're going to add a new item. So right click on source files, add new item, and you're going to want to click on C++ file.cpp and enter the name main. Okay, so now you have this main file. Let me first off, before I forget again, zoom in. Okay, so zoom in as far as we can, and we'll zoom out as we need space, but try and keep it readable. So the first thing we're going to want is include, and then triangle bracket IO stream. Okay, so what are includes? So let me first touch on 2 backslashes. Will make the text green, and anything you type in here is considered a comment. So basically, anything after 2 double slashes doesn't get compiled, isn't code. It's just a comment so that you can kind of type things into your code, and the compiler won't use it, but you can, if anyone else reads it, then they'll understand it better. So I'm going to be using comments around. So include allows us to use 2 things, cin and cout. So basically the way it works is that when you write code, you can include these other files, and they'll allow you to use other things that aren't in your project that you didn't write yourself, but these are other functions or other things that the program you can have in your program. So C and cout are 2 things that we can have if we include this IO stream, and the IO stream gives us a lot more, but that's really what we're going to be using. Include, and then we're going to want stdio .h, another bracket at the end. This will give us printf, which is another function that we'll be using. I'll explain what functions are eventually. And using namespace std. So some things like this cin and cout, which we'll be using, have this namespace thing in front of them, which declare sort of a area that they're from. And if you say using namespace std, you won't have to include it. I'll show that in a second. And then I know there's a lot that I'm saying I'll show in a second. Just kind of follow with me, and I will explain as I go. So void main void brackets around void, and squiggly bracket. Notice the different types of brackets here. We got circle and then sort of that little squiggly. So this is your main function. So the main function is where everything in the program gets started. The program will look for this, and then when it finds this main, it'll start running the code in here first. And so this is really the start of the application. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to print something to the console. So we're going to go printf bracket quotations, and inside this quotation is the text that's going to get printed. So we're going to say printing, first program you always do is hello world. Sort of like a just something people always do first when they're teaching. If you look at any tutorial, most times they start with this hello world print. So we're going to go with debug. So if we hit this little green button, or hit F5 is the shortcut for debugging, we'll bring up it'll make the executable, run it, and then it disappears immediately. because there's nothing stopping it from ending. The code has been executed, it prints it, and it ends. We can also do Control F5. This will give the it'll bring up the message, and then it'll say press any key to continue when you do Control F5, because you're debugging without the debugger, so it runs it like an actual executable. And so when it reaches the end, it just sort of puts up this nice little press any key to continue, and then when you press any key, then it'll close. So when we're doing console applications, you'll probably want to run with Control F5 sometimes, so that you can actually see what happens, and then sometimes you'll want to run with F5 when you're not doing like when you're trying to debug through, and I'll explain what debugging is as we go. So right, printf hello world. There's another way that I didn't teach last time I did this, which is cout, and then you can put in quotes like hello world, and then semicolon. If we add the last quote here, there we go. And so the cout does pretty much the same thing as printf, and I should have taught it first, but I'm just very used to using printf. So we got hello world, any key to continue. So let us just comment out. So this will show commenting a little more too, is that if we comment this out, the text becomes green. It doesn't get executed because it's a comment now. It's no longer a piece of code. And so we have hello world. The other thing is that you probably want to add a new line characters, so /n to the end of the text here. This represents a new line, and it'll add a enter pretty much to the end of the line, is the best way to think about it. So Control F5, and you can see that this press any key went to the next line because there was a new line character, so it pushed it to the next line. Again, we can show that new line here, and Control F5. So new line, hello world, new line, press any key. So the difference between the cout and the printf is that, well, we'll get into that in a second. So we'll just leave them there, and let's go over variable types. So we have integers. I'm going to go over this quickly and then display after I've typed them all out, explain them one by one. So here we have the 5 main types. Generally I don't use doubles depending on the situation. These are really the 4 you'll be using the most. So this is how you declare variable. Let me just comment out the rest of these so that we can read. So we have this button up here, is the comment selected lines, or you can right click and say comment selection, or you can use Control K or Control C, and that'll comment a section that's selected. So we have integer, variable type. So basically every variable has a name. So we can have variable, or we could have x, y, t, y, whatever you want to have your variable name as, you can do. It's what that variable will be referred to from now on. So let's see here. If we have a variable int, we'll call it an integer. Again, the name doesn't matter as long as the name doesn't have a number in the front of it, or as long as you don't try and name the variable something like that is blue. Basically blue text like int. You can see that void up there, which I'm going to explain way later on, probably not in this set of videos, is another one that's sort of like blue, so you can't use that. So pretty much anything that's not blue and doesn't have a number in front of it, you should be able to use as a variable name. So I'm going to go with the name integer. Pretty explanatory name, and I've spelt that wrong. Let me just backspace to the point where I had it spelled right, or at least I think I had it spelled right. Sure, that looks close enough. Normally you want your variable names to be descriptive, sort of what they're going to be about. Name them that way. So integer, 0. So what we're doing here is we're making the variable. We'll say like if we just did this, we make the variable and we say what it is. We can also say equals 0. This will make the variable and make it set to 0 when it starts. Or we could do this on a separate line. So we could have it set up here. So you make the variable and then set the variable to an initial value. You need to set the variables to an initial value, because if you don't, they're set to a random piece of memory, sort of. I'll explain memory later on, and I'll explain this more in detail. But basically they're set to a random number. So you want to kind of declare them. I'd like to declare them or I like to set them to a value and declare them all in the same line normally. So that's an integer. So what is an integer? Integers are whole numbers, so they can be negative, they can be positive, but the only thing they can't be is decimal. If you try and declare an integer like this, what's going to happen is it's going to cut off the 0.5. It's not going to round to 4. Or like even if it was 0.9, it's not going to go to 4. It literally takes, it says I'm an integer, you're putting in a decimal, gone. I'm not using that. I'm an integer, I don't have decimals. So let's show that. So here we can explain the difference between cout and printf. So if we were doing this in printf, we do %d. What happens is the computer parses through this file, and when it sees the %d, it will go to the argument list. So when we put comma and we put in integer, this is now past the, this is like the format for the string. And it'll read through and find this %d, and then when it sees a %d, it'll go through and after the comment and find the first thing after the comment and try and stick it in here and then have it in the print. And you could have multiples of these too, so you could say %d and then put that another %t after it and take integer and have it print twice. And it'll so on and so forth. So, and there's also %c, which will print a character. And there's also %f, which will print a float, and you kind of want to get those formats right depending on what type of variable it is. Right. So then, and then the difference here with cout is that you put in 2 more of these sort of arrows pointing towards the cout, and you put in the integer, and then that'll print the integer. Actually, after the line. So what you want to do here is you'd want to do another one after here, and then put the new line character at the end. And so if we run this, we get 3, because there's a space here, it's a little bit different, and then 3. So if we wanted the space, we'd have to add one here for this one to have that space. So close that and run it again. Hello world 3, hello world 3. And you see it's not 4, it's 3. If we change this to 1, you're going to have the same effect. It's just going to truncate it and make it 3. It doesn't use the decimal. And so the main difference between printf and cout is instead of having to do these percents and have an argument list, you just sort of just print it out like this, which is easier when you're first getting started, but I forgot about cout pretty much, and when I did this tutorial the first time I only showed printf. So hopefully this cout, if you guys feel more comfortable using this, go right ahead. They're basically the same. I'll probably alternate between them, or I might just use cout. Yeah, I might just start using cout because it'll probably be easier for people to understand than printf for now, because this is a function and I haven't explained functions, and I probably won't get to them for a while because they're kind of pretty far up there in the lesson list. Right, and so this will probably be the end of the first one. So, and then I'll probably chop this here, and then I'll get started on the second one from this point on.